Everybody, happy Thursday. I am Simona Wright James with Marijuana Matters, and today, alongside me,
Okay, I'm Alvin McElvin with Marijuana Matters and High Class Professionals. Gotta make sure I shout out my company too.
absolutely. So, we are so excited. We have an opportunity. Some of you may know Marijuana Matters. We've been since 2018, having conversations with faith leaders to really talk about cannabis and what is the role of faith leaders as it relates to cannabis to really drive the movement forward. So we're super excited today. We have three special guests with us, and for this 3.0 conversation. In previous years, we've had this conversation in New Orleans, right? We've gone to other places in the South and had this conversation. We've had this conversation in DC, Maryland area. And so today is really special because we're able to not only pull folks who are in the DMV, but other areas in the East Coast and that represent other faith groups. So definitely excited for today's conversation. Without further ado, I want to bring up our guests at this time who will be on the panel with us. And I feel like, I always feel like the best way to do this is to allow folks to introduce themselves, and then we'll jump right into the conversation piece. So I do want to popcorn it to Lisa, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and just pass the mic on. And I think you might still be muted.
I'm so sorry. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. My name is Lisa H. Edom, BSN RN, over 30 years. And I'm also the CEO and founder of New Life CPR LLC, where I am an integrative health and wellness coach, dealing with every mind, body, and spirit. I was exposed to this childhood growing up in Brooklyn, New York. I never saw anything wrong with it, but I credit it for I had multiple injuries on the job and outside the job that I should not ever work. It has let me go on and persevere and kept me from being opioid. I am also a member of the Cannabis Nurses Network, which are our expert educators. And I'm also a founding member of Cannabis Nurses of Color. And I'm also a minister. I'm with affiliated with the Borders Armies International Ministry. Leader is Shakina I. Fuller, and we are of the Fivefold Ministry, and we are an apostolic prophetic ministry. Have a great
Thank
Miss
you.
Patricia
That was
A.
quite a
Pat.
list.
Yes, there is a list, right? But you're busy, obviously, right?
Yes, yes.
So my name is Patricia A. Patton. In the internet streets, I'm best known as Canna Boomer. I'm a practitioner um, who's focused on educating and advocating and supporting cannabis. And I'm particularly focused on people who are not often talked about and not seen in the sale and marketing of that. And that's people who are 55 and over. That's where I think there's an absence of information and education. So that's really my focus. I'm active on a few communities and communities, I don't mean that, committees on the national level and on the local level. And I'm happy to share any of that with you in this conversation. So I'm passing the mic to Rabbi Khan.
Thank you, Patricia. I'm Rabbi James Khan. I'm a rabbi. So I work as clergy in the Jewish faith. I'm actually, I'm in a lineage of rabbis in cannabis. I'm not the first Rabbi Cannabis. That's my dad, Jeff Khan, who, 13 years ago, made a pretty crazy move, which was to apply for a dispensary license in DC when 10 years after DC actually voted to legalize medical cannabis as a compassionate AIDS law. It was blocked by Congress for 10 years, and that expired under Obama and a Democratic Congress. And so all of a sudden, DC was able to get medical cannabis, and my family applied after having worked in the nonprofit space doing advocacy work around progressive cannabis laws and the reformation of laws, and also on a personal level, working with my grandparents on my mother's side, who both had illnesses that were helped by cannabis, but did not have consistent access to high quality medical cannabis. So it's very personal for me. I've been helping my family build that business for the last decade. And I've also worked in both mom and pops cannabis companies and also large multi-state cannabis companies, mainly in the realm of corporate social responsibility, basically taking their dollars and using them to make cannabis a force for good in all of the communities that we entered. For so long, cannabis criminalization has done so much damage, especially to marginalized communities. So we were adamant that the legalization of cannabis must do good and must help heal some of that damage. So that's a little bit about my background, but my family owns a store here in DC called Tacoma Wellness Center. It's the oldest DC dispensary and the largest, and that's where I'm at mostly these days, full time.
I love it. So as you all can tell, we have, again, a pretty dynamic, collection of folks, of stories, of experiences, right? And what I love about this conversation, and please make sure if you're tuning in, I put in the chat, but let us know where you're tuning in from, what state, or just share a little something about who you are. We want this to be an interactive conversation, right? So we're going to have a dialogue together collectively. And we want to make sure that you are part of that dialogue. So right around 12:55 or so, we definitely want to open it up to questions. So if you have a burning question or thought that you want to share as it relates to faith and cannabis, please use the chat. We will talk back. We want this to be interactive as much as possible, right? And what we know from everyone's introduction, again, because everyone has a similar or shared experience, is that we are able to jump into the conversation kind of, what's the old expression, feet forward or head forward. I think I'm twisting those up. We're able to just jump into the conversation. So I want to ask everyone, on the panel, what are some of the things that you're hearing in the community about the belief of the role of cannabis when it comes to faith? What are some of the things you're hearing? I know, and I do want to preface so folks have a bit of an understanding. Lisa is with us, in the capacity as a medical professional and also someone in the clergy, obviously Rabbi Khan, someone who's in the faith community, in the industry. Miss Patricia, as an advocate, she's really connected to various groups of people, but in particular advocating for seniors. So I imagine you're hearing something different. And then of course, Alvin, as someone not only with Marijuana Matters, but who has a history as a legacy operator in the DMV, you're tuned into the community. So what do you say when folks think about, cannabis and faith? What are some of the things you're hearing?
Well, I'll start by saying that for the most part, what I'm hearing is that there's a complete separation between faith and what actually happens in folks' real life, because there's some incongruence between what we've been taught relative to spirit and what, the behaviors that are associated with a clean spirit. And cannabis is not a part of that in terms of how the faith has been used to control people and to guide, social movement. And as a a Reformed Baptist, shall I say, as a Black Baptist who grew up in the Pacific Northwest, but roots are in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. I mean, I come from staunch Black Baptist fire and brimstone, and so it's hard to shake that from your system when that's a part of sort of the fabric of who you are. Even though intellectually, I know that there have been lots of teachers, who have walked the earth and helped people understand, how to guide themselves in a way that works for them. And so I think that this is a great opportunity to shed some of those misconceptions and those fallacies and those fables and to just separate the science, the medicine from what we're being taught about being good or bad, because the two are two separate conversations, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and I kind of agree. Like in the legacy market, I find that a lot of people who use marijuana are not necessarily like religious, but they're more like spiritual. They feel like, you know what I'm saying, they connect on a spiritual level, not necessarily with the tenets of religion and all the things that they feel like are strict in religion that doesn't allow them to bend or use marijuana. And I think that's one of the things that we're trying to get done today is create a way to have a conversation with the people, with the clergy members and people who are in the church or in the religion or anything like that, and have them have a conversation, be open to having a conversation with people who just use marijuana recreationally or for spiritual reasons or for medicinal reasons, for any reason, whatever they use it for. They have to be able to feel like there is an open lane of conversation for it.
Agreed.
I see people really kind of hung up on the question of, is this medical or is this recreational? So I once had I'm remembering a customer who I saw for a long time when I first opened actually a store here in Maryland a few years back, and he came to me about a year after I've known him, and he said, "Rabbi, I'm feeling guilty." People come to me with guilt all the time because that's what Jewish guilt, what we do. And he said, "I have to tell you, I joined the program because of chemotherapy that I was getting treated for, but that ended 3 months ago. But I'm still using cannabis. And, am I doing something wrong?" And I said, "Well, why are you using cannabis still?" And he said, "Well, before I used cannabis, I would come home from work every day and my stomach would be in knots, and I'd go up to my office and I'd hide from my family, and I'd basically stay there until I went to bed and work all night, and then toss and turn, get crummy sleep, then wake up the next morning and do it all over again." He said, ever since I started using cannabis, I'll take a few drops from a tincture, cannabis suspended in a liquid before I leave work, and when I get home about 20 minutes later, I start to feel the benefits, and I want to hang out with my kids, and I feel like talking to my wife, and sometimes we're intimate, and I have a great dinner, and I sleep like a baby, and I wake up and do it all over again the next day. And that was kind of when it struck me that, I started to feel that all cannabis was medical cannabis. All cannabis was being used by human beings wanting to live better lives. And so trying to parse that out and to help people feel good about recreational, right? Because recreational has almost it's kind of a lesser term, right? Medical is up here, recreational is what you do if you're just recreating, if you're not working. But if you think about even the English word to recreate oneself, to be kind of birthed again, to come back to life, to be reanimated. That's what cannabis can do for us. Gets us out of our head and gets us in the moment. And so I've really worked with a lot of folks in the faith community to just understand why they're using cannabis, why they want to use cannabis, and to try to reframe it in a paradigm that doesn't have shame or stigma connected to it.
Yeah, I think.
Please.
Why can't it be both at the same time? It doesn't have to be either or. It could be both. You
Yep.
know what I'm saying?
I think it is.
If you're using it this time for medicine, that's cool. If you're using it this time for recreation, that's cool as well. There doesn't have to be a difference because it's the same plant.
It's the same plant.
I agree with you, but I think that we have to figure out a way to have these conversations with people who feel, for example, that they won't go to heaven if
Yep.
you know they drink or smoke or whatever it is that they do, and that's where some work needs to be done. That's consistent with what you said, Rabbi, and what you said, Alvin, about you know calling the plant a recreational versus an adult use. Like all of these are trick words. Like
Mm.
it's just a plant, you know?
That's exactly how I feel, because as far as I'm concerned, it's all medical. It's all medical. It's just the thing that you don't know why, because you haven't been educated. And that's where the gap needs to be bridged, you know? And I know, like, for myself, feeling the stigma, being a nurse, being a healthcare professional. And at the time, I was a minister in training. And I didn't know how to come to my leader and speak to her about this. I had to be integral. I had to come and speak about it, especially when I started learning all of the fact that, we do have an endocannabinoid system. And it's not just us, it's all mammals. They prescribe CBD to dogs and cats, you know? And, at that time, we had a medical crisis. My daughter was told that, she wouldn't walk again unless they operated on her and put steel bars and bolts and nuts in her back. And we prayed, and the sign that we got was no surgery. And people thought that I was crazy, but my faith was definitely expanded, stretched, and over and beyond. And like I said, and I stumbled across a mastermind, a nurse consultant, cannabis nurse consultant. And by the way, I am a cannabis nurse consultant, educator, and advocate. So yeah, so you know, but having conversations like this is the key, to get the word out. And I think that people need to seek a wise counsel,
Yeah. So
when it
my
comes to
question,
matters like that.
my question will be, Lisa, like, how would somebody, you know what I'm saying, that's not necessarily that doesn't want people to know that they smoke cannabis, they enjoy cannabis. How do they broach the topic with their minister or somebody that's in the faith base that they, because a lot of times those people are like your mentors, the people that you kind of look up to, and you don't want them to judge you, or you don't want to feel them to, you don't want them to look at you a certain way because you use cannabis or whatever like that. So how would you suggest that they broach the
Exactly.
topic of talking about cannabis with you? And same for you, Rabbi.
I feel that, like I said, seeking out other faith leaders that, have the knowledge to try to, that can assist you to broach the topic, faith leader, mentor. And then also, seek out healthcare professionals that know, because I just feel that right now, I feel that nurses and all faith leaders need to come together to educate and empower and our communities, because we have we are called and chosen. We are called the lights. We all about, healing, all about, becoming whole, but like there's one key thing that I know, that there is no condemnation in Christ. So, there shouldn't be anything about shame or anything about fear, because that is oppressive and that is false doctrine as far as I'm concerned. But like I said, being on both sides, and there's also a stigma still in healthcare. And I have to give kudos to which I am a proud member of, the American Nurses Association for somebody finally recognizing cannabis nursing as a specialty. So now we just need the medical and the rest of the nursing team to come on board, because this is the truth and this is the facts.
Can I just, oh, Rabbi, sorry, were you about to speak? I didn't want to cut you off. Okay, what's so beautiful about these conversations when we get together, I often feel like the prep conversation sometimes is, I don't want to say it's a dynamic addition that folks don't have privy of, right, when they're listening to the conversation. Because what I recall, you both sharing, and I think everyone on the call did to some degree, but even in the industry, even when you were in, like, there are moments where you all express or shared, fear, right? And just kind of, walking that line of being one of faith, but still very much believing that, this is plant medicine and this is my role and this is how I will interact with the plant. So I do wonder, if you feel so inclined to speak, even to add on to what you were saying, Al, like, add on to what did that moment feel like? If you have to go back to, I called it affectionately like a coming out story of cannabis, but that's more or less what you all were sharing during the prep. Would you mind sharing with the audience, what that moment looked like for you? Because that might help too listeners to know, like, we even experience it in the industry, just, the fine line. Uh-oh, I think you're muted. Let's see. And I understand, because I was having, as you all, technology issues. If you want to try, you could jump in at any point.
But yeah, so I mean, for me, I know I kind of, if I'm being honest about it, like I was experimenting with weed. I've been the weed head in my family for a long time. Let's just say it like that. So so when I was growing up, you know what I'm saying, one of the things that pushed me away from like church and more, like I said, to spirituality and just finding my own path through marijuana is the stigmatism and the stigmatism that you'll get from, this is way before like weed was acceptable too. Like it was a different thing. You know what I'm saying? So like the stigmatism of being oh, he uses weed, or he likes to be high, or things like that, or you know what I'm saying, that's the devil's lettuce. That's what they used to say a lot of the times. You know what I'm saying? Oh, stop smoking that devil's lettuce. I mean, it just puts you away and makes you feel like, you know what I'm saying, you're not accepted. You're not one of their group, even though I got all these other good things that I do. You know what I'm saying? I do XYZ here and there. You know what I'm saying? But since I use cannabis or anything like that, I'm shamed, or you know what I'm saying, I'm not accepted with the flock. Is pretty much how it comes off, and it just turns people off in a certain sense.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes.
All right. Yeah, I totally agree with you, Alvin, and I still feel, I mean, let's see, it's been 13 years now that I've been working in cannabis, and I make a point of speaking about cannabis all the time. And the more uncomfortable I am, the more I try to speak about cannabis. And I find that I'm still feel like it's a confession when I tell people instead of a conversation. And I think that that's just because the war on drugs was really effective and has really implanted in our mind a vision of what a cannabis user is. And it's someone who's escaping life, or it's someone who is less engaged or lazy, or all these silly ideas in my head of what what's this say about me. But that's ridiculous. And we know, that there are incredibly productive cannabis users. I think this call is full of them. But I don't think we can underestimate the harm caused by the war on drugs in so many ways, but including, even for us in the industry. And if we're struggling, gosh, I have a lot of sympathy for people out there. And I remember during COVID, during the lockdown, I remember a lot of folks, a lot of our customers would come to me complaining, they had spent a lifetime perfecting the art of hiding their cannabis use, but now they're stuck in their house with their family. And, you know, it's not easy to hide cannabis use when you're with someone 24/7. I really encourage people to have that conversation, to you know, and even with your faith leaders. Now, there are faith leaders. I've always made a point of saying I'm not the Jewish police, but there are certainly, you know, people that are, you know, the Catholic police and the Protestant police and the Jewish, and those are different types of faith leaders. And I'd recommend finding someone that you don't feel is very judgmental, that you feel is accepting and loving and comes from that Christ space that Lisa was talking about. I think it was you, Lisa, right? And that place of love, because that's where cannabis helps us resonate from. I think resonate from that place, and just I would root it in the Bible itself. I mean, in the book of Genesis, in the first chapter of Genesis, and in chapter 1, verse 29, we that famous line, and God said, "See, I give you every seed-bearing plant that is upon the earth, and every tree that has seed-bearing fruit. They shall be yours for," the Hebrew is le'achla, for consumption, for eating, for taking in. So, you know, cannabis is here for a reason, and it's up to us to figure out how to use it in a holy way that serves us and serves our best self, because it can be used, you know, it can be used for perhaps less healthy ways. But that's I think what this conversation is so great, because we can't get to the root of how to use cannabis in a productive way if we're not talking about it. So glad we are.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I think that, you know, although my generation was exemplified by free love and sticks and whatever we used to call marijuana, it's like we are the ones that are most caught up in our minds and in our psyche based upon the war on drugs. And so there's a lot of work that has to be done there, because I'm approached often by people who are asking for a friend. I call that's my new newsletter, asking for a friend. Everyone's asking for a friend. But in fact, what people are trying to figure out is how to integrate the benefits of the plant into their own life in a way that is consistent with other things that they believe. And I think that being able to talk about what's bothering you or what doesn't make sense to you in a conversation that is with other people who are not like you, you know, that this is helpful in moving the understanding forward.
Yes, and I believe that the war on drugs was supremely effective, because they used cannabis to oppress and abuse our communities. And so much so now, you know, our communities, the people in our communities have PTSD when it comes to cannabis. So they know how to trust medical. Okay. So now they're willing to go with recreational, but not realizing that you still have to swipe your ID. They still know what you're doing, you know? And, you know, the knowledge of not all cannabis is intoxicating. And as the rabbi, you know, as a Rabbi Khan, you know, alluded to, it's not just smoking. You can eat it. You can make tea out of it. You can make a salve out of it. There's so many different uses. And it's always what I feel that every dispensary should have a cannabis nurse there, because it's the nurses that do the patient teaching. It's the nurses that reconcile all of your medication, tell you what interacts with what, and don't do this with that, and da 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 da. I'm not taking anything away from the pharmacist, but it's something about a nurse. A nurse is the care manager of the patient, and they always look at the patient holistically. So who better to help you? And for those who are willing to try and they give you something and you don't know nothing about, and you take it and it doesn't and like, you have like a bad reaction to it, it's going to totally turn you off and cement your feelings that is bad or that is the way to other drugs. So this is why these conversations need to be had, and the education is severely needed.
Yeah, and education is a big thing, right? And so part of my spiritual journey with cannabis, you know what I'm saying, I found out that cannabis and church have been intertwined since the beginning of time. You know what I'm saying? It needs to be kind of like more like a reintroduction of cannabis through the church, because the war on drugs took that away from um as one of the things that you can use as a healing power or things like that. Like one of my classes, Rabbi, I actually we were studying the through the history of cannabis and stuff like that. That they found 2,700 years ago. They found in a Jewish temple. They found cannabis. You know what I'm saying? In the incense. You know, they were burning it as incense for everybody to. You know what I'm saying? To join together in their spiritual journey together. You know what I'm saying? Things like that. And so it's just
That's what this is.
exactly. So it's been the tool that the church and faith community has used in the past, but the war on drugs took that away, and so we got to find a way to kind of reintroduce that to the world.
Exactly.
Yep.
And
In fact,
know, oh,
no, please.
I just wanted to.
I was just going to chime in that. Sorry. All right, you go, Lisa. I have a talking problem.
I just wanted to bring up Sula Benet. She was the Polish anthropologist, and she's the one who found the mistranslation of cannabis in the Bible. And she migrated over to New York City, where I am. She went to Columbia University and did extensive work. And that's where she found the mistranslation to make it calamus rather than cannabis. And when we think about the potency of the cannabis back then as opposed to now, to make it into anointing oil is just amazing, because in the book of James in the Holy Bible, it says, if anyone among you is sick, call for the elders and let them pray over you and use the anointing oil. Of course, I'm paraphrasing means, and that was one of the reasons why they came for Jesus, because that oil was just supposed to be for the priest, for the high priest, and for. So now you're giving it to the regular people, and you're showing them that they could be healed, and that. So it's like trying to keep the powers that be keep us oppressed, while they keep all of the remedies and healing things for themselves, the truth, and just feed us the lies and keep us in check with fear.
Yeah, as far as I know, the oldest use of cannabis is 2,500 years ago in China. It was discovered at a burial site, and it appeared to be part of the mourning or the funeral ritual of burial.
It was a funeral. You're right. It was a funeral, right? They buried them with it in the tomb, and they found it with them in the tomb. I got studied the same thing. I definitely did.
So it's something about cannabis is maybe it's because of the smoke. Actually, now that I say that, the Hebrew word for a sacrifice is korban, which is the root of it is this 3-letter word which means to come close. And I think the idea there is the smoke rises up and it helps humans transcend this earthly limited consciousness, and helps us rise and have a greater consciousness, something broader, beyond the boundaries of our just small self. And so, I think you're right. I think it used to be just for the priests. And then when religion became democratized and it was a kingdom of priests, and we all, then had access to that holy anointing oil, which clearly had some psychoactive properties, at least from what we can find in this. I think you're referencing a archaeological finding from 2020 in Tel
Yep,
Arad
that's
in
exactly what it
Israel.
is.
Yes.
Where they
Yeah,
found
there was a
the frankincense. It was
exactly.
inside the frankincense incense, and they were burning it as part of the ritual inside the church, where everybody in there,
Of
The
everybody
course,
got
yeah.
Holy of
together.
Holies.
And it's
Not just the temple. It's so the way that the great temple worked back then, it was a series of concentric boxes. So the farther you got inside the building, there were rooms within rooms, and at the very center of it, it was basically God's home on earth. And the high priest would only go in once a year on Yom Kippur, on this Day of Atonement. And they were so scared of this moment that they would tie a rope around his waist, and that if anything happened, they could pull him out. But outside of the Holy of Holies, there were 2 altars, and they found residue of frankincense, cow dung, and THC,
THC.
and relatively strong, potent THC.
It was still,
and the
they
cow
still
dung
could
made
test
it
it.
smoke.
I'm sorry,
Yep.
they tested it when they found it, and they
Amazing.
still had the psychoactive properties. You pretty much, if you burnt it right then and there, you probably could still catch your head high off of it, which is crazy.
It's so cool. It's so crazy.
Yeah, and it's the same
It's
thing
so crazy.
in other countries, like the Hindu culture, like marijuana and the psychoactive properties in marijuana are like intertwined in a lot of the Hindu cultures, like religions and things like that. And so, I mean, like I said, it's not necessarily has to be an introduction. It's more a reintroduction. You know what I'm saying? And how to reimagine it to give to people in the new age, because that's pretty much where we're at.
Yes.
So catching the spirit, metaphorically really describes what was happening.
I love how there's all of us from different backgrounds, and including Hindus and folks in China and 2,500 years ago, all are connected, by this one plant. I mean, in this world that we live, it feels so broken and shattered, and people feel so far apart from each other. But we're not. It's an illusion in and of itself that cannabis, I think, helps us mend and awaken to.
And I think we're only looking at cannabis from one perspective too, because, like I said, if there's a reintroduction, do you have to reintroduce all the ways that people were living through cannabis? They were making clothes, sales, paper. They was doing all sorts of things with the hemp plant. You don't have to use cannabis just to get high. You can use cannabis and hemp in a whole multitude of different ways to be able to just live your life. You could eat it. They have it's protein based. You know what I'm saying? You can eat the seeds of cannabis and all sorts of things. People were living off of this stuff.
Yeah. Yes.
So,
and the thing about it is that, like I said, cannabis doesn't just consist of THC and CBD. There's over 140 cannabinoids, and they're still counting. Because done in 1973 when President Nixon formed the Controlled Substances Act and scheduled cannabis in Schedule 1. Schedule 1 says that it has no medicinal use, and therefore there should be no research done.
The craziest part about it, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I know it's exciting. Go ahead.
Now, the craziest part about that is they recommended that he didn't put it on the schedule list, and he turned away what they told them and put it on the schedule list anyway, because that was the propaganda that they were trying to make happen with cannabis. They were trying to erase the use of it.
And that was called the Schaefer Commission. He got a group of doctors together because he wanted them to prove that it was bad. And they came back and said, we can't find anything bad. It's really good. And he still didn't care. And he buried it, and and ever since then, everything's been going downhill. And I really, truly believe that the reason why there's so much chronic illness and during the pandemic, so many people lost their lives unnecessarily because they were all endocannabinoid deficient. Okay? Because the endocannabinoid system maintains homeostasis that everyone needs. It maintains it in our bodies. So instead of systems overcompensating when other systems are in decline, that's when the endocannabinoid system come in and does what it needs to do and direct all of the chemical processes in our bodies to come to homeostasis so that there will be no illness. And I really believe that when God created us, he didn't create us to be sick.
I think people don't. I think people, for those who might be feeling shame about cannabis, listen to what Nurse Lisa just told us here, because there is a system in our bodies whose entire purpose to exist is to interact with cannabinoids. That's all it does, is interact with THC and CBD and all the alphabet soup of those chemicals that have different medical properties. Mm-hmm. That is amazing. In fact, the runner's high that we talk about, that's also an endocannabinoid. Our body produces its own form of cannabinoids.
Makes it.
And if you don't produce enough, you can supplement that with plant-based cannabinoids. Or there's also synthetic cannabinoids, which we don't recommend, but which come from the pharmaceutical industry and are much harder to dose and don't have the entourage effect, which is all the goodies that we don't even understand of how the plant works. The magic of the plant is just, when you take apart, it doesn't work as well.
The whole plant, you know?
What you need.
And the thing about it, the endocannabinoid is named anandamide. Okay, so our body produces
bliss.
Okay, so
I think that's what people don't understand.
What you say?
I was just going to say something very similar to what you just said, Patricia.
I think they don't understand the relationship the reason that there is, the reason that we even know that we have an endocannabinoid system is through research on the cannabis plant. Mm-hmm. It's through that discovery that THC and CBD, that there was a relationship between phytocannabinoids and the endocannabinoids that we know more about our own bodies, and we know why, for example, people experience a sense of bliss from what's it called? Anandamides.
Yeah, anandamide.
From the anandamide.
Or the bliss molecule.
Yes.
So let me ask you this. It's kind of interesting because in this conversation, and I love it because obviously, it's an organic one, right? We have structure in terms of different things we know we want to cover, but you all have shared that cannabis has, historical roots, spiritual roots, biological roots, right? And also scientific. So when we think about moving forward in ways that we can help to break stigma, educate community, educate ourselves, right? Because a lot of, being in the industry is also about re-educating, to your point, re-educating ourselves, right? And I love this question that was in the chat. I do wonder, from Iris Salon, just around, at this point, is it better to have a cannabis church than try to convince the congregation? So I think that's an interesting question, because is it about, are we in the game of convincing? I feel like that's even a sub question. Or if anybody wants to jump in,
definitely.
Just respond to that question.
I think one of the things is there's always, from the beginning of time, especially I'm just gonna speak personally. For me, I'm a fact-based person, right? And so since I can really form thoughts and really get to thinking for myself, I always had a thing with church where it was science versus faith. You see what I'm trying to say? And it's always been you gotta take this on faith, not what's based on fact. And for me, that never worked. And so I think that's one of the things that's stopping people right now with the church, within the church, you know what I'm saying, and using cannabis, because it's all this science and fact-based things, you see what I'm saying, that shows you that, cannabis is for you, cannabis can help you, cannabis was put here for you to use XYZ. But there's been so much work done on the faith side of it, where they just telling you to take it on faith that you're going to be a bad person. You feel what I'm trying to say? If you use these things, and it's been going on for so long that it's become ingrained in people's minds. It's hard to backtrack off of that. You see what I'm trying to say? And I feel like
they've been programmed.
Say that again.
I said they've been programmed, and they must be deprogrammed.
Yes. Yeah, that's pretty much what I was trying to get to.
Yeah.
No, but we've all been
Yes, all of
programmed.
us, all of us,
I
definitely.
mean, we have all been programmed, but I think that to concur with what you're saying, Alvin, I really think that we have to find a bridge. We have to find a way to share what we know without being preachy or without, you know, taking the position that we are the guide or we are the way. I mean, it's like everyone is, if you're lucky, you're constantly learning. You know, you're in search of who knows what, but you're really pushing against your own boundaries, hoping to be more of who you are. And for some people, you know, cannabis is the way for that, but for other people, someone
Yeah.
else is the way to guide them, you know, to take responsibility for their own knowledge and learning. So um, I think that it's absolutely true that the responsibility that all of us have in terms of what we're learning is that we find ways to share it with the community, because that's really what the plan is about, you know, in its fullest spectrum.
Right. And I think that, you know, it was the propaganda that really shaped the church's view from the government, the war on drugs. You know, that's what really you know, got them so cemented in it, because it's been going on so long. It's been over 50 years now. It's been exactly 50 years from 1973. Okay? And before that, mostly all medications had cannabis in it. You think I felt as a nurse, I'm at work and I'm dispensing cannabis to my patient, pill form, but it's still illegal federally. You know, so this past May, as a member of Americans for Safe Access, I lobbied on Capitol Hill and they thanked me. You know, and the thing is not to push it on anyone who does, just like with different medications. Okay, you have a choice, refuse it. You no way. So it should be the same way that no one should look at you anyway as well. You know, but having
Amen.
conversations
Okay.
like this going forward, you know, I see us collaborating to, you know, and you know, like, you know, it's such a disparity because on the West Coast, cannabis has been legal for like 26, 27 years, and the East Coast is just now catching up. So on the East Coast are not on the same level as the healthcare workers on the West Coast, and we are one nation. So all of this disparity, all of this heartache, all of this oppression that's still going on in certain parts of our country doesn't make any sense.
And I think the same is true with clergy. I think you've got a lot of clergy who aren't so experienced on the East Coast, who are scared,
Yes.
and who, yeah. I mean, I think one of the cannabis can take down some of our boundaries, and religion is often very much boundary focused, and that can be a challenge. But I think someone talked about, you know, staying curious and constantly learning, and I think that in some sense, I think that's what cannabis does best. You know, it returns that kind of. There's a rabbi called named Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, famous rabbi. He actually marched with Martin Luther King, and there's a famous picture of them holding a Torah, walking down anyway in a protest. But Rabbi Heschel talks about the purpose of religion is to be in a place of radical amazement. Because when you really recognize that life is holy and that God is all around us, and that that we are each in the image of God, then you're amazed with this beautiful life that we have access to, but that we can get numb to life, that we can take it for granted, that even the most beautiful vista view out the window, you know, you spend a week somewhere and you're used to it. But cannabis can reinfuse life with re-spark our interest, our excitement, our passion, and maybe. And I think it would be interesting to have a cannabis church. I think there are a few experiments with that, but I personally find what's most meaningful to me is using cannabis within my own faith tradition as a way of trying to almost like it's to reconstitute it, like it's like a freeze-dried ice cream where you have to add water. Living water, cannabis can be that living water to kind of breathe life back into something that can be stale, and we can miss the forest for the trees. We can get stuck focused on the wrong things in religion and forget what it's really about, which is living a holy life, meaningful life, being good to each other. It's a tool. To me, cannabis is a tool. It should be in all of our toolboxes. For some people, it's a tool that works better for them. For some people, it doesn't work so well, but it's there, and we should at least know about it and be. And I think it's part of our job as leaders in the community is to educate people about this tool so that they have access to it.
Yeah, because and Rabbi, I will say, just to jump in, because what happens when you don't have the education about something, right? You will continuously kind of repeat what you know, and that knowledge is often limited, right? So you again are perpetuating what Lisa was saying. You are perpetuating propaganda. You're perpetuating and speaking out of fear, right? And I love what you said a second ago about like just the remaining curious, right? So even with my parents and folks in my own family, they're like, "Oh, you smoke on it?" Yeah, I do. But the thing about it is, like, for me, it's always been a tool that actually helps with not only productivity, but to your point, creativity, and it allows for greater focus, right? So everyone has a different energy, and I think a different rationale as to why they may tap in or why they may integrate cannabis into their wellness, into their lifestyle, right? And folks, I think definitely need to hear it more widely said, kind of in that way of here are some ways in which it can actually be utilized. You know, it can be utilized for pain. Obviously, if you have pain in your bodies, your back, I'm sure. Patricia, in your walk with elders, that's probably, I would imagine, one of the main reasons why maybe elder population would want to consume or learn more about cannabis if they aren't already integrated, because of pain management. Or it could just be for simply management of your day or your quality of life, just being able to improve it, right? So I appreciate so much what you just said. And I love this conversation just around what a cannabis church even could look like. There's another question too, if anybody wants to speak to it. If anyone knows about cannabis as a sacrament in the Rastafarian community, or in a community that you're familiar with, if you wouldn't mind sharing, that would be great.
I mean, I can't speak specifically to it, but Rastafarian, like is all kind of like an offshoot of Hinduism. Like I was saying, there's a lot of Hinduism in Rastafarians, and like I was saying before, in the Hindu culture, cannabis, magic mushrooms, or it's called bong. You know, there's a lot of different ways that they called it, but it was infused in their culture, and you know what I'm saying. It was a big part of how the priest and the community interacted with their gods. You feel what I'm trying to say? And so therefore, I'm pretty sure, like I said, I can't speak specifically to it, but I'm pretty sure that part of that is what transferred over to when the Indians came over to Jamaica and brought Hinduism there, and it turned into Rastafarianism. That's what I think about it.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm not so familiar with Rastafarianism, but I do know that in the Rastafarian religion, cannabis is a sacrament with medicinal and spiritual properties, and that it's seen as a gift from God, and that it's a tool used in prayer for contemplation. And I think what I like from the little bit I know about Rastafarianism is there's a ritual. I've seen folks take a puff off of a what's it called? There's a chalice, and it's like they'll hold it up to their kind of third eye. And this idea of kind of ritualizing your cannabis use, we know that this how important setting is to what we get out of tools like cannabis or other similarly, we're not talking about psychedelics here, but how although cannabis can be a psychedelic, but just how important that sort of intention is. So trying to, some people say a prayer before they consume cannabis. Some people say, may this be for the sake of connecting with that which is bigger than me. But just saying an intention aloud, I think, is something we can borrow from Rastafarianisms and use in our own practice. And using cannabis as a way of kind of connecting with nature and calming the self and elevating our consciousness.
I think
And
that,
also, I love that Rastafarianism calls God Yah or Jah,
yeah.
which is the Hebrew word for breath,
Mm-hmm.
which is Yah. And that's like as you
Yahweh.
exhale, Yah.
Yahweh.
So as you're exhaling smoke, it's like God is coming out and you're breathing God in and breathing God. It's kind of poetic.
Yes.
Sorry, I cut you off.
No, I'm sorry. I just feel that once you have the knowledge, all use it because you're using it for a reason, and it's different strains and like like we said, different ways of using it. You wouldn't use what you use at nighttime, what you do for daytime. You have strains that will give you focus, don't make you lazy, don't make you sleepy, and also you have strains that don't always stimulate your appetite. You have strains that suppress that appetite. Like we said, just staying curious. That's what Miss Patricia said. She said, staying, we always have to seek, like you said, growing and developing and evolve in all ways. If not, we are stagnant. And when you become stagnant, that's when you start dying, really, like right then. So it's always about moving forward no matter what. And it's really major for mental health. See, we didn't talk about that because it also treats depression, anxiety, and unfortunately these are a lot of things that have been exacerbated from the pandemic. So people, like, mental illness is caused from trauma. That's what causes mental illness. So for us to be sober minded, we can't be mentally ill. How can make a conscious decision and you don't have faculty, and just like the Holy Bible says, like, God didn't give us the spirit of fear, but of power, love, and of sound mind. And I feel that as where we are today, we can't get that sound mind without help. Because it's too many. It's always a fear propaganda. There's wars and the economy and da da da, and then people are still suffering from long COVID.
Yep.
And one thing that I was struck.
We have all lost people. Sorry, go ahead,
No,
because I know our time.
no. One thing I was struck with when y'all was talking about moving forward with cannabis and just always like exploring with cannabis is that they co-opted, they say cannabis is a gateway drug, right? But they co-opted the word gateway drug and led you to other drugs. They say that cannabis leads you to other drugs. When cannabis, when you think about it, is an exploration tool. It is a gateway drug, but it can lead you to the gateway of the spiritual realms. It can lead you to the gateway of creativity. It can lead you through a great way of a multitude of different things. They just wanted you to focus on that. Oh, if you take this drug, it will lead you to, worse drugs. They even said it wasn't necessarily that it was bad. They said that it will lead you on to the badder things in life. You feel the worst things in life. And that's one of the things that we got to kind of take the power back away from. And yeah, it is, like I said, we can frame it as it is a gateway drugs, and then we can list a whole multitude of things that they can lead you to. And I think that could be very powerful.
It's also an exit drug, which is something that's not talked about as much. But if you look at Maryland, for example, the first time we saw a dip in the number of opiate-related scripts was the first year after the medical cannabis program was brought on. And for a lot of folks who are, if you think about chronic pain, which so many Americans struggle with, there's really not a lot of options between, Vicodin and Tylenol. So if Tylenol is not doing it for you, if you still have pain, and Vicodin is risks, a life of addiction. And we know that every time we give someone Vicodin, there's going to be a few people that take that, and that's it. They're addicted from that moment on. The more we can come up with alternatives for treating pain, and cannabis really fits in that middle slot. It can really help pain that is greater than Tylenol can handle, and that you don't need OxyContin for. But even those people who are addicted to opiates, cannabis can be opiate potentiator. So that means you can take this less of the opiate dose you have, and still get the same effects. And you can actually titrate down, lower your dose, and get off of opiates for some people just using cannabis. So that's why it really is an exit drug. And for the fact that we have 70,000 Americans dying this year from opiate-related overdoses, it saves lives. I mean, there will be people that don't die because they're able to get cannabis instead of opiates. It's that's why I really think every church, every mosque, every synagogue, you name the religion, if they have an activism bent, if they have a social justice bent, cannabis and access to cannabis should be at the top of their priority list, because this is saving human lives, and each human life is a universe unto itself, and each one is a reflection of the divine. So this is life and death for some folks.
Mm-hmm.
I love the way you talk about it, Rabbi Khan.
I'm a little passionate. I'm a little passionate.
Just a little bit, like a lot of passion.
It's divine. I love it.
And I love talking to fellow seekers and fellow people who see the truth of cannabis. It's an amazing plant, and we're just learning how to fold it back into our life now that we can talk about it openly and out in the open without having to worry about losing our jobs. At least, those of us who are lucky enough to have that.
Reintroduction, re-education.
Yep.
Yes.
And when we think about, ways in which, community, whether you are, again, a faith leader, you're a nurse, you're an advocate, operator, like, if you had to leave, just one bit of advice for anyone who's listening to this talk, who may watch it, as a recording, what's the one thing that you hope they would have gained from this conversation, so that way they can just think differently, perhaps about the integration of cannabis and faith? What's the one thing that you want to leave them with? And this question's for everyone.
Okay. Me, I just want people to know that there are people like Rabbi Khan and you know what I'm saying, and Lisa, that are in the faith clergy, or the clergy and things like that are open to it, and you just gotta suss it out and kind of fill it out and be willing to stand on your faith about what you feel like as a person inside you and how you feel like it affects you, and then go talk to them without worried about being judged or cast aside, because it's not even about that. It's about acceptance. It's about, you know what I'm saying, learn. Like I said, it's about exploring and figuring out what works for you and what's best for you. That's what I want people to take.
I see myself as, as a bridge, really, between those who are making sense of science and the consuming sold all of these products, and there are large segments of the population that people aren't talking to. The other thing is that I also pride myself on talking to lots of different people, because you cannot get, the truth, whatever that is, from just being with people like yourself. So I think that interdisciplinary, cross-discipline, cross-generations, all of those kinds of environments are really important in terms of growing and being in those environments, being true to who you are. I really feel that I should be able to come anywhere I want to go, where whatever's going on, and integrate into that, share and be who I am the same way that you guys are. are describing. So I think that for me, that's really the important thing, that you move in society, that you refuse to be invisible and continue to learn as you're moving.
Well,
Well said. Well said. I know that, being a nurse, is right now like the best of both worlds concerning this topic, because I can educate from either side, but I would like people to really understand that knowledge is power. And I would advise people to take their power back, because like I said, the pandemic was so traumatizing, so traumatic, and people not only lost people, they lost their lives, their jobs, homes, like, it was just devastating all the way around. So how do you get past that? And just having this conversation is letting everybody know that there's people out here. If you must seek us. You must seek us. It's not just the people here on this panel. There are a lot of people
yep.
out there doing work. Google us. Google the people in your communities, and just click, and most of all, pray. Have your own relationship with your creator, because man can tell you anything. But I know that when I started this journey, the Holy Spirit in me kept telling me, yes, yes, yes. So can't nobody tell me nothing different. No one. Because I got the affirmation from God himself. So, but like I said, we are all learning, and we are all works in progress. So let's continue to learn and grow and build together.
Wow. I don't know what to add to this. I guess just a reminder to folks that suffering is not in Jewish tradition. We call things a mitzvah. A mitzvah is usually translated as a good deed or a commandment, something that God asks of us. And suffering is not a mitzvah, but living life fully is. And so, it's our job as human beings to find ways to work through our trauma. And we've all got our own trauma, inherited trauma from, whatever our families gave us and our people and our communities gives us, but also the lived experience that we might have that keep us from living fully, not just existing in this world, but living and thriving. And cannabis is one tool to help us to live that full life, that holy life. So I just would encourage everybody to find out for yourself. Yeah, don't take any of our word for it. Learn more, because we have not been told the whole story. And if anything, I hope that comes across today, that there's more than meets the eye to cannabis, and more that you probably haven't been told. So go look, and you can definitely reach out to me. I'm on Instagram at Rabbi Cannabis, but spelled with my last name, Kahnabis. You can find me on LinkedIn, James Kahn, or just look up Rabbi Cannabis or Rabbi of Pot. You can find me, DC. Thanks.
I love that. Guys. Can everyone share their contact as well? Ways folks can stay in touch with you. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Instagram, Cannaboomer, and on LinkedIn, Patricia A. Patton.
And I'm Lisa Cheatham on Facebook and on Instagram. And I also have my work email, lisa@nlcprovider.life. If you have a message.
Man, y'all know where y'all can find me. I'm on M2.
Y'all know where you're at. I love it.
I love it.
Well, look.
I guess I want.
Thank y'all.
Can I say one more thing? You can also find me at the Cannabis Nurses Network for all my fellow nurses that are curious, curious, and also the Cannabis Nurses of Color. Please find us, seek us out.
Yes. And I just want to say again, thank y'all so much. I'll say the best. Definitely please tap into Marijuana Matters. We exist as a hub, right? That we like to think of ourselves affectionately as a hub between community, government, and industry, right? So conversations like these are important for us to convene and have, and definitely when we think about ways we will show up in the future. Be it a conversation or a wellness activation or an event of some sort, definitely you will see that coming down the pipeline. I really want to just remind folks there is a link in chat real quick. There's a quick survey where it's just asking for one question response. Let us know, what you thought of the conversation, how it fed you in some way. Because again, we don't do this just to hear our own voices. We do it so that way others perhaps can have an expanded viewpoint or perception, right? Perception, I think someone said this a bit ago, your reality is your perception, right? But sometimes when you know more and you see and experience more, it changes over time, right? So that's kind of the nature of these conversations. It's just a way for us to be in community and a way for us to perhaps change or elevate our own viewpoint. So thank y'all so much for tuning in. Please check out Marijuana Matters DC on Instagram to stay informed. And of course, we want to thank Curaleaf, as this is a rooted in good program conversation. So just being able to have their support to function in this way has been super important. And we want to continue to uplift those who are in the chat in real time. Thank you for being with us, Dr. Neek. We totally agree that this is a valuable plant and a valuable way for us to, just help others is to share what we know. And we encourage you all to do the same. And please have a beautiful remainder of your weekend. All right.
Yeah.
Peace, everyone.